Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I am thrilled to be joined today by Aly Sterling, who we're going to let her introduce herself, but we're talking about a really interesting topic, talking about big gifts, charitable contributions, and the lessons you can learn from those big gifts in terms of your own kind of philanthropic life. So to get started, our guest, Aly Sterling, is the president and founder of Aly Sterling Philanthropy. It is a national consulting firm that helps nonprofits, foundations, corporations, and individuals and families meet their philanthropic goals and positively impact their communities. Most interestingly, in 2020, she published a book about her experiences transcending personal and professional barriers to become a female entrepreneur. It is titled 37, The Year I Stopped Making Excuses, Embraced My Power, and Launched My $1 million business. Wow, Aly, I can already tell we need a future episode all about that book. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Melissa. It's so good to be part of your podcast. I'm excited to be here and to talk about things that I care about and big gifts and little gifts alike.
Well, I love that. And I know that many people, that are listeners, whether they're, doing the school fundraiser. I was just at a band concert last night and I was working that bake sale at the end too, all the way up to significant planned gifts. They may feel like the world of charity and philanthropy is not about them, but I think this episode is intended to make things relatable. But before we dive into our specific topic, I'd love you to just spend a moment talking about, kind of you and how you got into the philanthropic world and what you do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
No pressure. That's like 2 sentences or less,
No, it's good. It's good. It's because it's interesting because of my age, and I wish I was 37 still, but I'm not.
Same.
I know. I was actually in the financial service world many years ago, about 25 years ago, and my father owned a mortgage banking company, and I thought that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And so he threw a graduate degree in sociology, I did an internship, and he was like, you need to go work somewhere else first, and then you can come back to the company, but I need you to feel good about that decision. So the joke is, I did have an internship at a nonprofit, and I fell in love with the nonprofit space. It was just something that I was not used to. I could, use my business acumen in this other space, this other sector, and I didn't go back. So I started working for some real grassroots nonprofits, and then worked my way up into more strategic, large healthcare systems. All along, again, I come from a family of a lot of self-employed entrepreneurs, and so I figured there'd be something that I would do at some point in time, and 17 years ago is when I founded our firm. So I came into it not by design necessarily, but I stayed because I fell in love not only with the sector, but with philanthropy specifically within the sector. That notion of just improving the human condition, no matter how that plays out, right? Whether it's volunteering, whether it's giving of time or it's giving of capacity and money and all of that good stuff. There's so many ways to leave a legacy in a lifetime.
Well, I love that idea. I feel like charitable giving is a great way to ground your family and their wealth and values. And it also just helps you to have kind of the benefit of gratitude and giving back. There is so much benefit when you're working with organizations or particularly with individuals. I have to imagine, given that you have a business, not just a 501c3 that is doing little deeds, what kind of conversations are you having? What do people come to you to work on?
Yeah, many different things, but usually there's a theme. It's usually about how to give more strategically, right? How to be more mindful and intentional around those charitable dollars, whether they are, whether it's $100 or whether it's $1 million or more. Families and individuals we work with are in a quest to maximize the impact of those dollars. And I think that, it used to be, and still is for most, it's kind of a haphazard sort of thing. We say yes to lots of things. At the end of the day, when you look at the things that you value in your life, the causes, the issues, if you took literally, this is an exercise I do with my clients, write down kind of like all the things that you value, all the causes and issues. And then you side by side list of where's your charitable dollars? Where's it going? Right? Is there alignment between those two things? Often there's not, and it's not a bad thing, but often it's that we love these things and these issues and causes, but all these other things over here are, kind of attacking us, are, asking for money, and we're saying yes to things that we really probably should step back a little bit and reflect and figure out what kind of impact do I want to make? And if it's haphazard giving, that's fine, because some people enjoy spreading.
That's their style. Yeah.
Right. Spreading a lot of, small gifts to a lot of organizations. But I think we're seeing our culture and our communities becoming a little more interested in more strategic, intentional giving. And that takes some discipline.
Well, I agree. And I think we can get into this, but I can give some examples of some giving that I've discussed with clients and we followed through on. But I wanted to use a specific gift that was announced this year. I was inspired by an article in the New York Times in February that was talking about a gift from a longtime professor at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, a woman named Ruth Gottesman. She's a doctor, so Dr. Ruth Gottesman. And she gave $1 billion to the university, which will provide free tuition to this school for their medical doctor training for the future. And it is a really interesting story. It's a story of actually a story of both her and her husband. And he was the one who went and was an early investor with Warren Buffett. Wouldn't we all like to have had a time machine and go do that? And when he passed away, at least from the stories, it's not clear that she knew exactly how much he had amassed. Mm-hmm. But he told her he knew that she would be able to figure out what to do with it. And this 93-year-old widow who is like, that is not doing her biography justice. She is still teaching and involved at the board at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, decided to really go big with her gift, which just like, I heard it around kind of the water cooler conversations of, did you hear about this? I heard it on news stories. And I thought it would be a great kind of deep dive into philanthropy to kind of launch from here and kind of grab some lessons.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was excited that, this was something that was important to you, because I was also really intrigued by her story and by this gift. I think it's the biggest gift any medical school. And what I love about what she did was that she was empowered by her spouse before, after he died, to make this decision in her best interest. I love what he said about it. It was like, just, you'll know what to do with it. I love that. And her kids, I think, also echoed the same sentiment, like, Mom. What they said, what I think is really important, is they said, you need to make a decision soon, right? Like, right. I mean, she's 93, but some people, they want to wait a little bit, but I love that she gave this gift into the medical school in the Bronx, right? Which is uncommon, I guess, from reading that article again, comparatively to, metropolitan New York City. And so she really went with where she had a strong affinity, that relationship that she had. And I think that's what it speaks to, is we have these relationships, whether they be work related, personal, family oriented. And she just continued that passion and affinity that she had as a professor right into her charitable giving. What I also enjoy about it too is that she really developed a relationship, it seems like, with the director, or with the gentleman who is in charge of everything, and they together sort of created this living legacy though for her. It's a brilliant gift, and I hope that it really does, transform the goals that she's seeking. I know in reading about it, there's, everyone always has a couple naysaying things, and someone said, well, how do we know if this is going to structurally fix, other issues that are systemic to why a lot of young students don't choose primary care as the medical, degree of choice. But I think this is going to be a movement in the absolute right direction, no matter what.
Well, I love, there's so much talk about billion-dollar endowments and how is that actually filtering into the impact of student and community lives. And so this is a very concrete and clear, kind of
Mhm.
pathway. And it would be very difficult to just to do a blind gift at a planned gift at the end of life, to know that you would have the power to do that free tuition, because it would get into the hands of committees, et cetera. So they do talk about how the college's director really partnered with her to propose it to the board, where they jointly had control and were trying to make the most impact, which I think is a lesson learned.
And she gets to witness the joy that she's created for so many people. I mean, just that video, that short clip that was of her making that announcement and those students, it was just, brought tears to my eyes, how happy they were and how many other generations will benefit from her vision, right? And her strategic, intentional gift.
Yeah, we'll make sure to link to that and link to some of the articles that kind of dive deeper, because there is this I think it's the example of her actually being visible. It's not just an article about somebody who, kind of nobody in the community had any idea that they had money and they tucked it away and they passed away, but they're never able to be interviewed because they didn't bring attention to themselves during their lives. And I guess this could be a subject of debate. I'm sure that in some of your conversations, you have discussions about whether gifts should be anonymous or named.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, we're sitting here in the Midwest, in a Midwestern sense, you don't bring attention to yourself, your wealth. I live in a community here in Dexter where we also have our office that is very much millionaire next door, but you're driving your Chevy, you're not in the newest, sports car model. So what do you tell people? And I'd love to talk about this story in particular, about how, bringing that attention to yourself can make an impact, whether it's personal impact or, kind of ripple effect in the community.
Yeah, you're so right. It is a cultural thing. It can be a geographic sort of approach or attitude. It can be a religious one. It can, there's lots of factors that go into play related to how we feel about acknowledging something that we've done. And research shows that even though people will answer, like in a survey, what their least motivating reason is to give a gift, they always put recognition.
Yeah.
But what we know to be true is the reality is that people do feel good about that recognition. It reinforces the decision that they made. And to your point, most importantly, it inspires other people to do similar things. And so we always tell our clients, again, we'll respect whatever their wishes are. But if they're on the fence or they're thinking about recognition, we underscore the fact that when you enter a building or you even enter a website of a nonprofit, you see the names of people who are affiliated, who've associated their charity with that organization. And it brings comfort and credibility to that nonprofit. So it really increases that credibility, that sort of reputation, that sort of fiscal stability when you see someone's name that or a company that you've heard of. And so that's very, very helpful. A funny story, we did a campaign for a religious organization, and they're very, humble and don't want recognition. And we got to the end of the campaign and I said, well, let's do a donor wall, right? Where we show everyone's gifts. And they were like, oh, no, like we can't do that. That's just not, not our vibe. And I had multiple conversations. They had their own conversations and they finally decided then let's do it, just because we can't know what our future generations, what will inspire them or not. So they decided to do it. We put this wall up and we kind of, we put paper around it. So it's, going to be unveiled, and those donors, I mean, they rushed up to that wall to see where their names were. And, just it became part of their story and part of their pride and part of that narrative that they leaned into and they felt really good about, and they talked about it with others. So yeah, sometimes it's not the most comfortable thing, but it can be really important for permanence and for future generations too.
Yeah, I'd say there are small percentages of people where that name recognition is sometimes more important than the gift. Very few.
Yes.
But in many cases, it's more of, I think of Adam Grant, the social researchers, kind of book Give and Take. And there are the people who are really interested in helping first, but also recognition is okay. Or, kind of looking for that kind of exchange of social, kind of information. And for most people, it isn't that it's a selfish, like, give me credit, but like thinking about a community or a religious organization or other nonprofits, if you can be similar to other people and they see that you're able to make a gift, it may give them the opportunity to reevaluate their own capacity to give and their own relationship in the community, which I think is very interesting and can have a really terrific ripple effect.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, when you are working with people, how do you make sure, do you guys have like kind of here's what the return on investment that we're looking at, or return on philanthropy that we're looking at for gifts? Or how do you make gifts more strategic and more concrete? Like this one is a prime example where you can really read the power. There's even speculation that this will improve the health of the overall community in the Bronx, a very under-resourced community relative to, surrounding areas. How do you help your clients kind of understand the impact that they're able to have?
Yeah, that's an interesting, complex sort of question, and or just sort of environment to be in. And so there's a continuum, right?
Right.
I think it definitely, to some extent, is influenced by the kind of contribution you're making. So you and I and your listeners make small gifts all the time to organizations, and we do it because usually someone asked us, right? It's a colleague or it's a friend or family member. We may not really appreciate or understand the nonprofit or the charity that we're giving to, but we're really giving to that person who made that ask because we're supporting the things that they care about. In those situations, that impact or that yield or that return on investment, whatever phrase we want to use, at least for me, it's not even something I think about, right? Because that wasn't the motivation. When we start to look at giving more significant, making bigger investments of our charitable dollars, the stakes go up, right? Our expectations go up. And so I really work with our clients to appreciate, and understand and evolve into expectations. Everything from, metrics. Do metrics matter? Some of my clients' metrics, it matters greatly. If you're making a 6-figure gift, there's a pretty good chance that you have a gift agreement with an organization that stipulates that there are certain outcomes, and those are going to be data driven. Some of my clients are making, 6-figure gifts to organizations, but they don't care as much about the metrics. They're more interested in the relationship that they're having with that nonprofit, with that cause. So they're really hands-on. They're the ones who are spending time around the board table. They're spending time at the C-suite level of that nonprofit, or they're spending time on the ground floor of that nonprofit, right? Literally in the weeds or in the animal kennels or whatever the mission might be. So they're palpably feeling it, seeing it on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And so the numbers don't matter as much. It's head and heart, and it's a little bit of both, right? I think that's where sort of this notion of satisfaction comes into play, not putting all of your expectation into one basket, whether it be data-driven continuum or whether it be, heart sort of, knowledge based upon what you see and hear and feel, really hands-on. So there's a balance somewhere in between, different for each individual and each family as to what they expect and why they expect what they do.
Well, I think that there's so much power in the ability to define a gift, which not everyone's going to have that opportunity to do. And it's not always appropriate. Sometimes just write a check and know that you are making a difference for the local food pantry or something like that. But in other cases, like right now, I'm working on setting up a scholarship that would be named in memory of someone's deceased spouse.
Nice.
And it's to an organization that really was instrumental in his university life. And that's really powerful. And so I can have a conversation with the development officer at the school where the gift is going to be to determine, hey, what would be a minimum amount? There's some business function here. You can't just write a $5,000 gift and get a named scholarship. So what is the minimum? What are the parameters around how we could do this? And then in other cases, it's more of a conversation of, what's really working for you. Or in some cases, you may be making gifts, but you could do it a different way and get a better tax benefit.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are appropriate. To me, the really huge lesson is that recognition in this case, and also that they were collaborating with the university so that it could be a gift that really had a more immediate impact than if you just kind of threw money at them. And then, what inevitably happens, Aly, I assume, you would assume probably like me, would be committed, like bureaucratized and go through like many committees versus having the control and the impact to say, totally. I want to make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And Melissa, you bring up something that's, I think, so important. How we get to our final kind of relationship with philanthropy is a journey, right? Mm-hmm. We've had many clients who are asked to make a gift, a substantial gift, because there's a tax or there's a functional benefit that some of their advisors are saying that they need to achieve. They're not coming from it from an altruistic perspective in the beginning. Yeah. But I can't tell you how many of those gifts become that foray and that path into the joy of giving and the joy of philanthropy. So I always say, however people come to making their first sort of sacrificial charitable gift, that kind of hurts, right? It's not easy to give. You had to really talk to someone about that gift or not just use a checkbook to make that gift. Those kinds of sacrificial gifts, the motivations for them sometimes aren't always the most charitable, but then it's well stewarded, good relationships with that mission or that organization can transform someone's approach to their philanthropy forever for good, which is generationally so important. So, and I love that you talk to your clients about this too, Melissa. I mean, sometimes there's so few wealth advisors who do that, who have these conversations around giving. So kudos to you for doing that work.
Yeah, well, there could be selfish reasons not to, right? Like giving away your money isn't necessarily the most profitable for the financial advisor, but we always like to say our goal is not for you to have the most money at the end of your life. Our goal is for you to live the life you want to live and have your money be a resource for that. So some people don't feel like they have the possibility to give. Some people tell me, I would love to do more, but I don't think I can. And so we can answer that question. I really feel like we are working on behalf of the client. So if you do not have that, philanthropic, kind of gene, understandable. And there's no judgment there. But if you're like, I would like to do it, but I just don't know how, I'd like to be more meaningful, then there's often a lot of room for opportunity for discussion where it can make a difference on the tax reasons or in your, kind of overall situation. And you can do the things that would really fuel some of that, kind of feed your soul in a way. So, and having, professionals like you as from a consultant perspective, working with the organizations that matter or, kind of contemplating, and then having the wealth advisor and or tax professional also kind of dialed in to bring their, kind of part can be very powerful to making something that feels like it's not achievable, be realistically kind of woven into what you decide to do. There's so many benefits for your family and legacy too. So that can be huge.
Exactly. And I think, as females too, we've really started to lean into giving circles, right? And different kinds of social and pooling of funds in order to make even a bigger difference. And so I'm so happy to see that those are really starting to catch on. And even in young adults, right? We have the most charitable generation on our hands who've been fundraising for causes they care about since they were 5, 6, and 7 years old. And today they're saying that they want to work in the nonprofit sector as an intentional decision, getting an intentional undergrad or graduate degree in it. I fell into it, by accident. But today, I mean, my kids and their peers they're starting their own nonprofits. They're doing their own, GoFundMe pages for things that they care about. They're just so good at it. It's effortless.
Well, Aly, I can tell that we're going to be having some discussions in the future. I'd love to have you back as a guest sometime soon. There's so many interesting things that you're thinking about, and there's a lot of intersection between each of our worlds. So I think that is really helpful. As we kind of wrap up, I asked you to kind of prepare, what does money wisdom mean to you, or give an example of money wisdom to you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So that was an interesting reflective question for me. I love the topic of wisdom and money. And for me, it wasn't about maybe financial literacy or that.
Hmm.
It was more about, as I work with families, I've had to do my own introspective around my relationship with money from a family origin perspective.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And so my family, I came from a family that didn't discuss money. We didn't talk
Hmm.
about it. So therefore, I didn't have a lot of money wisdom, right? So I had to figure this stuff out on my own. I feel like, so I know this. And as I raise my own children, I talk about money. I talk about it. It's part of our dialogue, the good, the bad, the ugly, because I went from a family that did not talk about money to being an adult going, oh, wait, what? Like
Yes.
now I got to catch up, So when you asked that question, I thought, oh, well, I feel that money wisdom is something I owe my next generation to reverse what my loving parents, sort of left out of our relationship and our family.
I grew up in a very similar family. Well, my parents were divorced, so that it was like two sides, but
Mine too.
mom didn't have a lot of financial literacy to begin with, hadn't had a checkbook that she controlled herself until the divorce. And, dad would save money, but he actually didn't grow up with a lot of money himself. So there just weren't examples where you kind of knew how to address money. And then you've got a double, it's doubly hidden away when you're a woman.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's changing quickly, but
Mm-hmm.
at least, historical gender roles, stereotypical gender roles
Totally.
didn't have that assumption that you'd be making the investment decisions and things like that in many cases. So hopefully episodes like this can help to reduce that. Now,
Yes.
Aly, if somebody's interested in knowing more, reading your book, etc., we'll make sure to have links in show notes, but where could they find you?
Great. My name, AlySterling.com, and everything's on our website, including my email address too. So yeah.
Perfect. And we will plan to have links, but I also just encourage you, if you're a listener and you say, gosh, I would really like to do more when it comes to my own charitable giving. You don't need to give $1 billion to make a difference.
Right.
What I would encourage you to do is have a discussion with your key decision makers in your family and also lean on your professionals. If you think you have a financial planner and they're not willing to talk about this, then reassess. But I really think your CPAs and financial planners should be on board to really helping you over time. It doesn't have to be done in a week, but kind of enhance the impact that you're able to do with some careful thought. Aly, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. It's so much fun.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to pearlplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned.